Chapter 635, Leader of All Sects. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. Zhang Yuochen nodded. He pondered for a while before saying calmly, "Whether you believe it or not, I have to tell you that I did not bully or mistreat her. If she had tried to hurt me, I would certainly have considered killing her. You are Sword Saint Xuanji's disciple. I believe whatever you say." Fan cupped his hands toward Zhang Yuochen. "It is time to say goodbye. I hope we can be good friends rather than sworn enemies by the time we see each other again." Bukian raised his right leg and stomped hard on the ground. He jumped and soared hundreds of meters high into the sky, and then vanished from the deep forest. Had it not been for the Orange Star Emissary, his one flaw, Fan would have had the power to match against Di Yi. Zhang Yuochen gave a sigh. It was true. Sometimes, women could make heroes bow in deference. The most sorrowful thing in the world was to fall in love with someone who would never love you back. Fan was caught in the same situation Zhang Yuochen had been before. Kai Yao was even more stone-hearted than the Orange Star Emissary. Hadn't Zhang Yuochen been more wretched than Fan was now? It took Zhang Yuochen half an hour to fly back to the Scroll World. He arrived at the gate of a half-completed city. Upon entering, he soon found Blackie and the Orange Star Emissary. Blackie was sitting at the stone table discussing how to eat Black Skeleton Flood Dragon King with Greedy Rabbit and Monster Rape. The three foodies had long coveted the flesh of Flood Dragon Lord and their mouths watered at the thought of it. When Zhang Yuochen came into sight, the smiles on their faces quickly faded away. Zhang Yuochen asked, "Blackie, Alxinian went to the battlefield of the primitive world with you. Where is she now?" "After we got back to Kunlun's field, we separated. I assume she is at the Saint Academy now," Blackie said. "No accidents is good news." Zhang Yuochen stared at the Orange Star Emissary standing in the far distance and asked, "Did you notice anything different on your visit to the battlefield of the primitive world?" Blackie rolled his eyes. He made a ball of black sheen with one of his paws. A layer of chi gathered around him and Zhang Yuochen. Apparently, he was going to say something confidential that nobody else could hear. Blackie said sternly, "Based on the marks I found on the altar in the Wood Spirit primitive world, I went to two more primitive worlds, an inferior primitive world and a medium-level primitive world. I found two more altars. Moreover, the chi of origin in both was repressed under the altar." Zhang Yuochen inhaled a breath of cold air. What on earth is Kai Yao doing? Making the primitive world an array unit and deploying such an immense array? Is she really trying to refine the Kunlun's field? Blackie said, "Maybe. Absorb the spiritual blood of all living creatures on Earth to break through the realm of true deity. If she succeeds, she will be the only god since the Middle Ancient times." "Of course, that's just my guess. It's not likely to happen because nobody could be that crazy. Actually, I see another possibility. She might be trying to deploy an unprecedented array to encircle the entire Kunlun's field and construct a fortress that joins the Kunlun's field with thousands of primitive worlds." To be honest, after she united Kunlun's field, she did do a lot to flourish the population. The era we live in could be called the prime times. If she actually succeeds in building a cosmic formation, she will definitely go down in history for her meritorious exploits. Zhang Yuochen looked solemn. What if the first possibility turns out to be the case? "As you know, all humans are selfish," Blackie answered. "It is very likely to be the case. So, I've come back to get your help in finding out the truth. According to clues I found at the altars, there are altar marks in the Kunlun's field and there is a link between them. The closest altar mark is located in the west frontier of the God-Falling Ridge. The God-Falling Ridge spanned through large parts of the eastern region. There were not only millions upon millions of savage beasts, but also hundreds of suzerains, large and small, scattered across the ridge. Small suzerains were usually made up of dozens of people. The histories of some of the larger suzerains could be traced back thousands of years. The number of disciples they had recruited exceeded hundreds of thousands. It was enough to make them rulers in their regions. The west frontier of the God-Falling Ridge was also home to the Yin and Yang sect, a sect that had been around since the Middle Ancient times. The Yin and Yang sect was crowned as the leader of all sects in the eastern region. It had disciples all around the world, and inner disciples garrisoned in the sect added up to more than 300,000. Adding in the disciples in the Eastern Holy Land and Eastern Evil Land, the number would be in the millions. There were even inner disciples of the Yin and Yang sect in the central, southern, northern and western regions. If outer disciples, affiliated suzerains, affiliated families, servants, drudges and human tribe were counted in, the personnel under the control of the Yin and Yang sect was innumerable. Because the Yin and Yang sect was so powerful, it was qualified to equal the black market, heresy, the Jins and the Martial Market Bank in the eastern region. It was the leader of all sects. In the west frontier of the God-falling ridge there existed a world of suzerains with the Yin and Yang sect as its leader. The imperial court's attempts to quell the eastern evil land had floundered when they reached the God-falling ridge, partially because it had been hindered by the influence of the suzerains led by the Yin and Yang sect. Zhang Yuochen said, "You mean that the altar is in the Yin and Yang sect?" "Only the Yin and Yang sect has the power to establish such an extensive altar," Blackie said. Zhang Yuochen was lost in thought. "In that case, I have to go to the Yin and Yang sect myself. No matter what the truth is, I have to find out." But the Yin and Yang sect has such a profound influence. We can't just break in, we have to figure out another way. All of a sudden, Zhang Yuochen's eyes brightened as a strategy crossed his mind. "We can't break in, but why not disguise ourselves as someone else to sneak into the Yin and Yang sect? If they think I'm a disciple of the Yin and Yang sect, it will be much easier to look for the altar." Zhang Yuochen looked at Blackie. "Blackie, I just remember that I left something behind. Go fetch it for me." "What and where?" Blackie asked. "It's the corpse of a disciple from the Yin and Yang sect and his suzerain token. It's where we fought with the Blood Crow King," Zhang Yuochen said. Blackie seemed to understand what he was thinking and nodded his head. He and the greedy rabbit left the scroll world for the battlefield. Once Zhang Yuochen's cultivation improved to the fourth change in the fish-dragon realm, he would be able to begin practicing the change of 36 forms. By then, he would easily be able to turn himself into a disciple of the Yin and Yang sect and sneak in. Obviously, Lin Yue, who had been killed by the Blood Crow King, was a good choice. That was why Zhang Yuochen asked Blackie to fetch his corpse. Of course, Zhang Yuochen had to iron out another issue first. He walked toward the Orange Star emissary. Even though she heard his footsteps from behind, the Orange Star emissary did not turn around. With no emotion in her voice, she said, "You finally killed Yi." "Yes," Zhang Yuochen said, "if you want to avenge him, you can take action now. However, I have to remind you that you have already acknowledged me as your master. If you take actions against me, you will be breaching your principle of loyalty and integrity." The Orange Star emissary sneered. "Zhang Yuochen, you are too self-righteous. To tell you the truth, I never actually took you as my master. I was just putting on an act." Zhang Yuochen picked a stone stool and sat down. He was at ease. "I have also been putting on an act. Had it not been for Blackie, who thought you are still useful, I would have probably already killed you." The Orange Star emissary turned around abruptly. A mass of holy chi appeared in her palms and the dragon lock chain was spinning quickly around her wrist. Zhang Yuochen gave her an impersonal look. He had no intention to wage a fight. Yi died, but Bukion Fan came back to life. The Orange Star emissary bit her lips, her facial expression growing complicated. "He is a good man. It's just that he loves the wrong woman." Zhang Yuochen smiled and grew serious. "You once said you are a descendant of Murong family. Few people in the Kunlun's field dare to call themselves a family." "So what?" said the Orange Star emissary. Zhang Yuochen said, "You say there are 4 creeds in the Murong family: loyalty, filial piety, audacity and integrity. I remember you killed Yin Yuking, the 3rd disciple of Ghost Scent, and your elder brother as well. Wasn't that an act of injustice?" The 4 creeds were rather important to the Orange Star emissary. Zhang Ruochen's words made her feel humiliated. The Orange Star emissary glared at Zhang Yuochen like he was a fool. Do you really think Yin Yu-King was a good guy? Do you think he could actually sacrifice his precious practice time in order to save his junior sister apprentice? To tell you the truth, I exploited your power to kill him on purpose. Zhang Yuochen certainly knew that the friendship between them was a joke. Perhaps the Orange Star emissary had her own unknown reasons for killing him. Zhang Yuochen stopped fishing for the facts and cut to the chase. Do you know Muerong Yefeng? The Orange Star emissary jolted, and her eyes lit up. How do you know this name? Who are you? From her expression, Zhang Yuochen knew that she must have heard this name, confirming his assumptions. 800 years ago, the Muerong family had been one of the largest families in the sacred Central Empire. They had nurtured many eminent talents, almost all of them loyal to Emperor Ming. The person in the Muerong family that had the closet relationship with Zhang was Muerong Yefeng,